Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Hakeem Green, Channel Live, live and direct. PDP all day, every day. And of course, you know I'm representing that anti-industry, as you can see on my Scully. Yeah, I'm getting it in, representing for my team. Big shout out to Ramageddon. Big shout out to anti-industry, 24 hours apiece. Divine, what's up there, son? Also want to give a big shout out to the homie Rozelle at, where we at, USALivestream.com. You know, just the whole team. Also want to give a special shout out to Center Stage Cuts for hosting us here, opening up their doors and letting us rock here. And also want to give a shout out to the city of Newark, where we are filming from, streaming live and direct. Enough respect to Roz Baraka, the next mayor of Newark, New Jersey. This is Say That. This is a brand new experience for myself, so you know, if you experience a couple glitches in the transmission, just bear with us. We're gonna get it right. But this is something that's new. We're trying to do something fresh. We're trying to do something groundbreaking and give our YouTube audience something just a little bit more tangible than the pre-recorded stuff that we're used to getting. You know, it's all love. We love YouTube for all the content that we're able to share. But it's time to step up our game and do this live and direct. And this is what we're going to do with our new show, Say That. Say That is where we give you, the callers, the listeners, the folks in chat, the folks tuned in to YouTube, an opportunity to call in and express your opinions. You know, you can call in or you can hit us on the chat. Either way it goes, it's all good. You know what I mean? My name is Hakeem Green, once again, Hakeem Green of the classic True School Hip Hop group, Channel Live. All we do is spark madism. Yes, I'm still sparking madism, but I'm doing a whole lot of other things too, and that's what brings me here to you today. Now, today's show, Say That, is about Black History Month. Is it obsolete? Do we still need it? Here we're smack dab in the cold month of February, where we celebrate Black history. For those of you who don't know the origins of Black History Month, Black History Month first started out as Black History Week. It was created by our ancestor Carter G. Woodson, who wrote the seminal book, The Miseducation of the Negro. For all you hip-hop enthusiasts who are maybe fans of Lauryn Hill or the Fugees, you know she had Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. She borrowed that title from the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, which was written in, I believe, 1932, 1933 by our good brother, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, who wanted to bring attention to the different issues in the black community as they had to do with our misunderstanding of ourselves, our miseducation through slavery and through, you know, American society. So, you know, here we are today, February 10th, 2014, and for some of us, we have still a long way to go. We're still walking around miseducated, so to speak, even though we've had, you know, years of Black History Week turned into Black History Month. We have yet, as a whole, as a black family, to, how can we say, realize our greatness in the present. You know, there's a lot of greatness in our past and in our history, and with the two guests that we have lined up for the night, hopefully we can delve into some of those events, some of those folks, and tap into our greatness and bring it to the present. Our first guest is the good brother Black Dot, author of the seminal work Hip Hop Decoded. This brother, as a metaphysicist and a hip-hop cultural critic, is phenomenal and has done a great deal in bringing our attention to hip-hop as a tool for our liberation and also as a tool for our enslavement. Brother Black Dot, welcome to our show, Say That.
Peace, peace, Say That. Welcome to be here. Glad to be here in the building.
Yes, sir.
For this monumental event, help you kick off what I feel will be a staple in the YouTube community that can bring us some fresh information on a regular basis.
Yes,
so,
sir.
It's
yes,
a pleasure.
Sir. So, Black Dot, my good brother, just give our audience a little bit more information about yourself. Let them become familiar about, you know, with who you are.
I wrote the book Hip Hop Decoded from its ancient origins to its modern day matrix as a way to expand upon what some of the grandmasters like KRS-One and Africa Bambaataa were bringing to the forefront in reference to how important hip hop is as a culture, as a way of life, not just something that we dance to and party to, but music is about healing, in time traveling, so many different aspects. And I feel that we as a people had lost some of that. Hip-hop in its reemergence, because hip-hop is nothing new, was attempting to bring this back before the industry. It's interesting that you got the anti-industry campaign going. The industry began to water it down and, you know what I'm saying, create a situation that would, you know, sabotage, so to speak, the true essence of the culture. So the book, Hip Hop Decoded, was an offering from my ancestors to the next generation on how deep and important hip hop is for us.
Okay. Now, you know, before we get into the conversation, you know, you talk about hip hop, and you brought up some of the legends, the KRS-Ones, the Africa Bambatas, Chuck D's, Puff P.E., and that particular time, well, Bam, you know, goes back to the 70s. But when we talk about like 1986 to 1989, you had a kind of a renaissance of consciousness,
yes,
of political activism that we hadn't really seen since the late 60s, early 70s. Like, we kind of went to sleep through the 70s and the 80s, and we started to wake back up,
yes,
in the 80s. What was it about the music at that time that caused that great awakening?
Well, it was a series of artists who reappeared. KRS-One, X-Clan, Brand Nubian, of course Public Enemy, and so many others. And they were, a lot of these artists were born in the 60s, so they still had the revolutionary aspect imprinted in them. So when they received a platform, a true platform to share with the world who we were, everybody had a spiritual, cultural energy about them which helped move us forward. You know what I'm saying? And this was going, like you said, from about 86 to 89, before NWA kind of hit the scene to try to counter some of that energy that Public Enemy and other groups were bringing about. It was a magical time. I learned more listening to a Public Enemy and KRS-One album that I had in my entire school years prior to that, because this school system, as we know, is not geared toward teaching us our true culture. That has to be done elsewhere. And when you come from a broken home, like a lot of us hip-hoppers was, the streets became, and the rappers became the true educators of our culture. So that time was very magical, very powerful.
Wow. You know, it's crazy because during the 80s, you know, Malcolm X being such a powerful image for a lot of us coming up, wanted to see his life depicted on the big screen. You know, we really wanted to see Hollywood represent that hero image for us. And for a long time, they shied away from representing Malcolm X. They said there was no market for that.
Right.
And, you know, P.E. came, KRS-One came, and a few other artists came out, and it's like magically there was a market that was created that Spike Lee, the great director, our brother Spike Lee, was able to, I don't want to say exploit, but for lack of a better word, you know, use this picture to exploit that market. Exploit is a bad term, but use the opportunity to, you know, create that hero image for us.
Yes,
with Malcolm X.
So, it's greatly needed.
So, and I think that all ties into hip hop and its importance to history. Black history,
yes,
as it may,
as we segue, indeed.
So, with that being said, for you personally, what does Black history mean?
Well, for me, because I have been so in tune with my history growing up, Black history, it means it's just another month for me, per se. Meaning, when history is taught all year round, your true essence, I don't need to be taught who I am if every single day I'm learning about who I am. So when a month comes around, a cyclic period that focuses in on who we are, that for me personally, that's not needed. However, I do understand for those who are not being taught the history of who we are as a collective, who are in the killing fields, these public school systems, every now and then, even if it's just for that month, for them, because remember, there's levels to this ish, as they would say in the hood.
Now, we on YouTube, so you can keep it real. We in the barbershop.
Sorry.
Big shout out to Center Stage Cuts. We in the barbershop.
We in the barbershop.
Like, you know, my man Steve Harvey would say, the barbershop is like the country club.
Yes, yes.
This is like, it's so appropriate for us to be having this conversation. So you can keep it 100%.
All right, so there's levels to this shit, son. There's levels to this shit. And if you haven't been educated at home, and if you haven't had even the edification of your artist, see, we grew up, and you knew KRS-One was going to drop something. You knew Public Enemy was going to drop something. X-Clan was going to give you the visuals of who we are, Brand Nubian. So we had, even in our peers, we could pass information and learn. This generation does not have that. They have Trinidad James and Lil Wayne or whoever, and they're not focusing except when Lil Wayne wants to say something slick about Emmett Till, so they don't have what we had even outside of the home. So I feel, as I said, there's levels to this. Black History Month, for those on a mundane level who do not get their history at any other time, it's important for them. But for those of us who teach it, learn it, and live it, it's just another day. It's just another month, the shortest month of the year, the most desolate month of the year, and so forth and so on. So there are levels to everything, and we want to make sure that we never throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, I was going to ask you, my next question was, do you think Black History Month is still relevant? And you kind of answered that with your last answer. So I want to ask you, how can we as artists, as culture shapers, create an environment where our Black history is every single day?
Again, I have to put some of the onus on parents at home, teaching.
But if parents, because we all come from the same system.
Yes.
Yes. We all come from the same system, right? And it's a broken system, right? And a lot of these parents don't have the necessary skills and background information to get. A lot of them don't even want.
That was leading,
trying to hit the club.
And that was leading me to. It all comes back to the artists of the time. The artists, listen, the muse in itself, the visuals, the art, the dance. It's a way that we always pass the history down from generation to generation through celebration. That's another reason they probably got this month in February, is because we're celebratory people. So we would be raising the energy. If this was in the summer, let's say they had Black History Month in July, man, we would be spiritually raising the energy through the spoken word, the dance, on such a fever pitch, it might shut this planet down. Wow. So they do it in the most desolate month. You know what I'm saying? It was icy cold out. So the artist, because like you said, the households, now you got grandmas at 35 and they out in the club twerking along with their children. So because you know you're not going to learn it in the school system, I put a lot of that onus on the artist. It's nothing wrong with making good dance music, party music, but we have to teach these babies at all costs so that when February comes around, it's just a refresher of some of the things. You might, like for instance, in my household, we're just going to specifically tune into one or two, so-called African Americans, and for the whole month to try to study these particular people, because we don't need to focus in and say, oh, it's a holiday, we can celebrate our culture. Not in my household. So what we do, we go into the Schomburg. I think they have a comic book expose going on this month with black comic books.
Where's the Schomburg?
Up in Harlem.
On 135th
and Lenox, yes. So that's what we're going to do. So for the month, we're just going to zero in on a few things, but it's very important for artists in particular. Now, we can start really going in about where does Black history, when does that start? Slavery? And this is another thing that, as I'm pretty sure some of your questioning will lead to. It's a very deep-ended question because...
Well, before we go there, I want to give the call-in number to our viewers, which is 862-588-5729. If you're out there in YouTube land and you want to chat, you want to call us up, please feel free to do so. And that's going to take me to our next question, which are share some Black history moments, some events, maybe a person or two that left an indelible mark that you would have only known about by studying it through Black History Month.
Well, Muhammad Ali comes to mind for me in particular, not because of his boxing prowess. We understood how great he was, but when he stood up and refused to go to war and fight somebody else's war, that was monumental for me because it just showed the power. Also, the boycott, the Rosa Parks boycott. Now, growing up, I'll even admit myself, I thought the boycott was 3 or 4 days. You know what I mean? I had no idea that the boycott was 2 years. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? So when you think about the magnitude of a people who can get together and stand for a cause for 2 years, that's monumental. So with that being said, those 2 incidents in particular, I thought were very key. You know what I mean? Because it showed unity. You know, anything dealing with segregation I thought was great because it forced us to open up our own businesses, teach our own children.
You bring up segregation, and again, this is Black History Month. We do a Black History Month. There's an economic portion to Black History Month that is often left kind of to the wayside. We talk about Black Wall Street in Oklahoma.
Yes.
And we deal with segregation and how because of segregation, Black folks had to fend for themselves. They had to do for self.
We had to grow up.
You know, and leaving slavery, we're now 100 years out of slavery.
Right.
And not even at 100 years out of slavery, we had a thriving financial district in Oklahoma that was so magnificent that the whites in Oklahoma were very jealous. Haters. To the point where they bombed this financial center
to the
ground and destroyed it. So that's one of the things that I learned during Black History Month that I don't think I would have gotten any other place growing up.
Yes.
You know, there's the spirituality that we get to go into during Black History Month. You know, right after leaving Kwanzaa, we get to revisit Kwanzaa, Maulana Karenga.
Yes.
You know, there's the US movement. We talk about the US movement, the Black Panther Party movement. A lot of these different organizations, these names that we should know as a people. February seems to be the time where we focus on it. But like you said, we need to make this an everyday walk. We need to carry this information and share this information with our young folks every single day. Now, we got the brother Phil Valentine, our great lecturer, historian, metaphysicist. Phil, how you doing, brother Phil?
I'm good. How's everyone?
Oh, we're doing great. We kind of, you know, we got this new talk show going on. It's called Say That. We're trying to give our listeners a chance to air their opinions out live and direct on YouTube. And this is our first show. And I have to say, this is a complete honor for you to be on the first show, on the debut episode. You know, I thank you dearly, brother Phil. You know, before we get into the line of questioning, if you can just, for our viewership, give them some background history on yourself, so they're up to speed.
Well, I'm a doctor of naturopathic medicine. Been practicing and serving my community for 45 years. I am a doctor of medicine and a doctor of classical geography. I've been one of the founding fathers of the underground conscious community, and I presently now have opened up for the last years formal university, Mission Sciences, where we speak of and work to lift and enlighten brothers and sisters on the higher understanding of how thought works, the science behind mind control, dealing with what we call genetic mind control, but everybody's now become familiar with how science and control has become more genetically involved and scientifically set up so that the thought process now at the mercy, or at least at the free field of folks who can access your mind. All of this we've been doing many, many years, and we are at this time setting up for our next semester, which is starting Saturday, So that's pretty much it.
Well,
Then working with brothers and sisters like yourself in the community, and it's very good to see that brothers and sisters are picking up the torch, taking it forward. No, for the Black Dot, he's been carrying the torch forward admirably, and definitely been awakening brothers and sisters. The old heads have felt it, but only those who are the children, few of the young brothers coming up, have been essentially doing. So we're really seriously proud and happy for the work, the folk work.
Well, I want to say thank you. I have to admit that, aside from a few of the folks out there across the country, not many of us have reached a level relative to the bar that you and so many of our elders have set. I was put on to you by the brother A.A. Rashid maybe about 9-10 years ago, and in doing my own personal research on you, I'm digging into an archive that reaches back, he said 35 years, and it was kind of unbelievable that you've been doing that work and laying that foundation. You talked about your work in mind control, and I think that that's very relevant to this conversation because we talk about Black history. One of the things that I was hoping for you to bring some clarity to was around the term Black itself, and Black history. What does that mean? What does the word Black mean? Black sometimes seems like a very nebulous term. It's so broad and general that you have people people trying to fit themselves into something that's very nebulous. So I was hoping you can bring some clarity around that term Black, how it's applied, and how we could use it to our advantage.
Well, it's interesting because the term Black and white has nothing to do with the color. They are polar opposites of one another, one containing a certain spectrum of color, the other containing all color. In fact, if you were to go to the dictionary and look up the definition Black and white, you will see that it says achromatic. So, in other words, achromatic meaning containing no color. So, black and white is not really a color, it's a condition. It's a status. And in the European definition of black, he has been fearful of anything black since he emerged. And the term black itself, in his definition, and the term black in our definition, has always been opposite. In the ancient African terminology, K-E-M is the term for black, and that was the name of an entire civilization. So if we're speaking about black, in his term, if you take the B and separate it from it, it's just be lacking. So if you're looking at yourself as a black person this time, you're pretty much falling under a classification, a synthetic classification, a kind of a fiat classification of status that was bestowed upon you based upon your having been a captive. So the term black and the term white became actually verifications or affirmations or definitions of a status.
Now, I've read in Black's Law Dictionary, confirmation of what you just said. And it also went as far as to say that, well, it labeled, it identified certain Caucasians as being black or non-white. Can you add on to that?
Well, for instance, you could use that as a reference point during the late 1800s, that after the so-called Emancipation Proclamation, and there was a great migration of African peoples north. The ex-captives began going north. They, of course, had a lot of what you might call skilled labor. During the time when they were migrating north and ending up in places like Manhattan, back there under the bridge, the Irish were going through their own form of migration here as well. Now, in certain parts of Europe, especially in England, under the aristocracy there, the Irish were lower than dogs. In other words, if you were to go to a pub
Yes.
that was owned by British, you would see that it would say, no Catholics, no black, no dogs, and then under that would be no Irish. And over here, when the Irish came, they and the blacks began to intermingle down there around by the shoreline, down there under the bridge and so forth. And they intermarried. But then, of course, Rockefeller and the rest of them needed to ensure that there was a cutting off of this migration of skilled black workers coming up, taking on white jobs. So that's when the whites began coming together, the Poles, the Italians, Czech, the English. They said, listen, the one common thing we have is that we have the same skin. So let's actually get the Irish into this and make them white too.
Interesting.
So the Irish became white after they cut a deal with the ruling parasites and then estranged themselves from the black because the ruling parasites made the Irish the police at that time. So that's when the Irish gave the white status to the society.
Wow, that's some awesome history right there, because when we think of racism generally, we think of black versus white, white versus black, and you did a great job in explaining the difference between color and status. But as it has to do with cultures of people, and Irish being classified as black and having this intermingling with quote unquote black people or folks of African descent, original people, we generally don't get that history. We definitely don't get it in school.
Yeah.
And we don't see it in the media, and that's just something that's awesome, because there's this idea of white skin privilege, and white folks or Europeans really selling themselves out for something that's illusory. It's not real. So that's a great point. So in that, how do we as a people then come together under a common term, a common cultural, a common culture? Like, how do we, we talk about quote unquote black people or African Americans. We're talking about folks here in continental United States, Jamaica, Trinidad, the African diaspora. What is the proper term that we should use that unite us all, or is that even a possibility? Does that do us a disservice by trying to amalgamate everybody under one banner?
That's going to be the conundrum. That's why the European has been extremely anal about making sure that there is separation and fragmentation. That's the so-called Willie Lynch, even though the Willie Lynch letter has been proven to not have really been existent. If the people were to read the Willie Lynch letter, just like the Protocols of Zion, they would see that everything that's in the Protocols that are being denied by the Jews, and everything that is in the Willie Lynch letter that's being denied by historians, certain historians that says it never existed. The fact of the matter is, the content of both of them can be actually seen, represented, and manifested in our present day reality.
That's right. That's right.
So to say that something doesn't exist and then read it and see that something is happening that is congruent with what it is that you're reading It's ridiculous to say that it isn't really relative or relevant because somebody can't prove someone else voted. But I would say that trying to bring together people of color, or I would say melanated people, or Nubians, or Kushites, all the different names that are assigned to us. What we are as the common African people of Alki blood, no matter where we are in diaspora in the world, we are first world people. We are autochthonous. We are original. So if any way that we could actually coalesce that, can bring ourselves up under the word autochthonous, or we can bring ourselves up under the word original. We can bring ourselves under archetypal. So what I'm saying in my book, the new book I'm writing called Cosmic Codex, we are not only original people, we are archetypes. We are the human archetype. And if you want to deal with the human, you can deal with the Human. We are the original. So if we want to call ourselves, think what it is. When you separate someone psychologically from themselves, and you have implanted an artificial reality about who that person is, and tell that person his world didn't start until he was a slave, or the world didn't start until 2,000 years ago, and you're growing somebody in that mentality. And it's very difficult to try to bring people together because most black Christians don't want to even accept their African heritage. So if you infuse a mind control psycho-spiritual drug like Christianity or even Islam, and tell them that they no longer are connected with the 10 to 20,000 year lineage that they had, telling them that they started based on the conquest of aliens that killed your grandfather and grandmother and then took you over for you not started us. That's going to make it much more difficult for African peoples around the world to come together, because after Islam conquered and began enslaving Africans, everybody began Islam raising the sons of that faith, and they began to predator or to prey on their own. So where do you actually draw the line? Everybody wants to call themselves after Islamic names. Say, well, Islam goes back all the way to forever at the beginning. It didn't start with Muhammad. It was infinite. Everybody's trying to co-opt what you are before all of this Chinese religion that they have out here, and they're trying to fit themselves. Just like the white man is trying to fit himself into our history. The religionists of the African mindset, or the African diaspora, those who adopted this foreign concept of our own astrotheological science, our astrotheological sciences became Christianity. It became Islam. But the original astrotheological sciences we had didn't belong to no Islam, didn't belong to no Christianity, and it had nothing to do with no Hebrewism. And all of these people, if you go higher up in the echelon of all three of those religions, you don't see anybody of the abduction, you don't see any archetypal African, you don't see no Mexican. That's still there. More black people in Islam, more black people in Christianity, and now more black people in the Hebrew than you can find any place else. And and especially in the sophisticated, in the more advanced civilizations that are out there, the more so-called modern civilizations, blacks who are in there have to be relegated through Christianity or Islam in order to enjoy that. So that will tell you something. The only way that you're going to actually be accepted up in higher echelons of the money-making, commerce, and the whole 9 yards of sophisticated technology is if you're one of these three. So you're either a Zionist Jew, you're either a Muslim, Islamic, who's got all the oil, or you're a Christian over here in the Pope. So black people, the original people don't really see. At the higher up you go in these three religions, the more white you get. Therefore, these are not your religions. These are not your concepts. They have nothing to do with you. Yeah. So until we begin to release ourselves from what it is we believe we are or think we are based upon our conditions, go back and study who we really were, find out who that was, we are all going to come together.
You know, I was in a Facebook debate, if you want to call it that, on the page Draped Media. Big shout out to Draped Media. But they created a meme which basically questioned the origin of Christianity, and then the debate was pretty much, well, Christianity is an African religion, and because it takes place in Africa, it takes place in Northern Africa, and in Chaldea with the blackheads, and the folks that we're talking about are African. And my retort for that is that the stories that are in the Bible aren't for the edification of black people. Though there are quote-unquote African people in it, is not for their edification, is not for their benefit. And oftentimes the African heroes that are mentioned are defiled and defamed in it, namely Nimrod and the civilization of Egypt. So to that point, the established great three religions have taken, the information that our ancestors channeled over thousands of years and have taken it and twisted it and used it against us. It doesn't really support our evolution.
Exactly.
Now, you touched on a couple points, and one of my questions, because so much focus around Egypt and Kemet. Whenever we talk about the great civilizations, we all know Kemet, we all know Egypt, but we don't know what came before Egypt. So I would like for you, if you can, to just give us some civilizations that predate Kemet, that kind of gave birth to Kemet, and where we can find these on the map, just to give us some type of a fixed point of reference.
You can go to the south, as Dr. Bennett told us, that you can go to the Monomotapa Empire, you can go down to the places south by the mountains of the moon, supposedly. Now there's a new brother who just came on the scene named Horace Butler.
Yes.
But says that mountains of the moon may not have actually been in Africa, they could be over here in the Americas. So it's very difficult for us to talk about predating Kemet, but Kemet is an amalgam of a dozen or so great civilizations that preceded it, mostly Kush. The mother of Kemet is Kush.
Yes, the Kushite Empire.
Right. So you have to look at Kush as the genesis, but Kush was not even a progenitor in its own right, because even before that, most people are not knowledgeable. And again, I want to take over, or at least bring or kind of involve the ancient Dravidians into this as well. Most people don't know that almost virtually at the same time that the ancient Semites were actually evolving into the great civilizations they were, parallel to them was Pinjudero, as well as the Kono and the Adavasis, the Dravidians, and the so-called Indus-Kush Empire, who rose to incredible heights, even as high as the Kemet. I wanted to kind of get there from Christianity, Judaism, and Islam to show that in the destruction of African civilization, high civilization, there was a concurrent destruction of an ancient Eastern civilization that matched same kind of sciences and architecture and building genius that the ancient Kemites as well had, the same kind of sciences that now become the Pharaonic sciences. Those who conquered those people essentially were the cousins of the ones who conquered over here. The same so-called Hebrews or the Jews or the so-called Ashkenazim have been found to have the same genetic imprint as the Brahmin and the Hindu who conquered the ancient Kol and the ancient Davidians over there. And if you look at the foundation of the so-called Jewish religions and the first 5 Pentateuch, you hear him talk about someone called Abraham. Well, if you learn about Abraham being the father of all 3 of these religions, you'd understand that Abraham was actually Brahma.
Brahma. His, with the wife Sarah or Saravati.
Correct, exactly. So it's connected. This entire situation we're seeing, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, is connected directly to the conquest of ancient India as well as the conquest of ancient Kemet. It happened, and then the healing of their ancient sciences went into creating what we see today as the papacy in Rome. And right now, Rome is pretty much the so-called 12 or 13 bloodlines.
All right, Doc, I'm sorry, but not to cut you off, but before you go on, we got a live call-in, and we want to give that person the opportunity to say that, to speak to us. So, yeah, just hold on for 1 second, but don't go anywhere, because I really want you to continue on the path that you were on. I have another question specific to that. Hold on 1 second. Caller. Hello? I think we lost him.
Hello?
Oh, no, they're there. Oh, we there. Hello?
Hello, sir.
Hey, what's up, brother? Can you speak up for us?
I'm trying to see. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Who's speaking?
Yeah, this is Jason, a black man from the YouTube chat room session. How y'all gentlemen doing?
Oh, we're doing great, man. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind? Say that.
Yeah, I was going to touch on the subject about you bringing all blacks together. I think we need to respect and honor and learn the fact that all history is important, and we need to start writing everything off that is white made, and this, the theory that the white man is superior. For example, Mohawk is a black hairstyle. It's an African warrior. Even Mr. T said that he learned that's why he got a Mohawk. We need to respect all cultures of our culture. Of our stuff. Same thing as the Bible. The Bible was all black people. Jesus is a black man. So a lot of other people. We need to promote that more instead of just promoting all these white ideologies. I mean, there's not even no black dark-skinned women in rap videos anymore.
So
I think X-Clan made it so cool to be black with the African change. African change and the way they look and everything. They made it cool to be black. And right now, it's not cool to be black anymore. Right now, it's okay to say nigga, but if you say faggot, your career will be over.
That's for real.
So it's okay to degrade the black man. And same thing, they promote all this black man being gay and black females getting with white men with Scandal and Human and even Whoopi Goldberg coming out with a new show. Right now, they're trying to genocide the black race with this media poisoning.
Well, we're gonna do everything that we can do to defeat that effort, and that's why we assembled such a great panel for tonight.
Indeed.
Do you have a question for either one of our guests before we move on?
No, I'm sorry. I'm going to study them. I read a lot of, I watch a lot of YouTube videos of Brother Pro-Life Bobby and a lot of Black Truth, a lot of a lot of pro-black speakers. But I'm not familiar with their work. But I will study their work.
Yeah,
I found out about like yesterday.
Yeah, you definitely got to check out Black Dot and check out the Dr. Phil Valentine, and I'm sure you'll be highly impressed with both. Thanks for calling in, bro. We're going to get back to with Dr. Phil Valentine.
Thank you, sir. Love you having fun, sir. Keep it black and strong.
Yes, sir.
That was our first caller.
All right, Doc, we back at you. Doc, you there? Doc, you there? I'm going to get Doc back on the phone, but he was dropping something real serious about, the origins of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, and Abraham being the father of all three. And when you get into the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses, quote unquote, first 5 books of Moses, and of course, Christianity comes out of, supposedly comes out of the Judaic Hebrew tradition.
Indeed.
And Islam, Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Isaac being the father of the Jews, and Ishmael being the father of what later became Muslims, the Arabs, and Islam, but Abraham as being the center. And what Brother Phil said is that the name Abram is essentially Brahma.
Yes.
Brahma.
Yes.
Abraham's wife, Sarah, well, in Hinduism or Brahmanism, Brahma's wife is Saravati. Now, I'm going to ask him a question relative to that. Let's get Brother Phil back on the... Now, I heard Doc speak once about Akhenaten having some connection to Abraham. That Akhenaten is the historical. It is the historical Abraham. Abraham is a mythological.
Yeah, if you haven't studied any of Dr. Phil Valentine's work, you have a long way to go. Magnificent, magnificent body of work. I've been studying it for 15 years myself. His work is dynamic, and he will definitely enlighten you and raise your energy up and vibrations to a whole new level. I see the world totally different through the body of work of Dr. Phil Valentine.
Yeah, so. I would have to say, so I mean, initially, for our viewers out there, Dr. Valentine goes deep. Like, it's really not surface level information. You might want to, get your weight up before you get into Dr. Phil Valentine, because he goes really, really deep. And a lot of his concepts, a lot of his propositions shake the foundation of how we're raised, because, we're all cultured in this United States of America, which is Judeo-Christian / Greco-Roman. Contradiction, but that's another story. And he gets at the root of that. He shakes it. When he was speaking earlier about us going back to our root, being Africa, Al-Kibulan.
Al-Kibulan, yes.
Al-Kibulan, and when we deal with the rituals, we deal with the ceremonies, we deal with the philosophies, just the way ancient Africans see and saw the world is very different than how we see the world.
And it's hard to teach that to children who only think that their history started during slavery. So a part of what Phil is also talking about is reconnecting, going back over the water, understanding that, and we can go even deeper than that. Of course, Ivan Van Sertima talked a lot about they came before Columbus, meaning your ancestral bloodline is everywhere. So to disconnect you from even this body of land is doing a disservice to the young brothers and sisters who are trying to learn about their true history. We don't even have to go to so-called Kemet. Kemet is shit, you in Kemet.
Yes, Dr. Phil. Dr. Valentine.
Yeah.
You were speaking before about Abram, Brahma, Brahmanism, connecting it to the Indus Kush region, or connecting that personage to the Indus Kush region. And I heard you in a lecture before, some time ago, if I'm not mistaken, relate Abraham to Akhenaten.
No, I actually did Moses to Akhenaten.
Excuse me, Moses to Akhenaten. I apologize, excuse me. And
No problem.
that comparison, that's the first time I ever heard that I had ever considered that. And I was hoping that you could go into that. First, I think it's important for our viewership to understand that we're talking about, for lack of a better term, Black history, or we're talking about the history of African people, of original people. And because Islam, Christianity, and Judaism has such a hold on our people, I think it's very important that we deconstruct these theories and these concepts to get a better understanding of where we as a people fit in. So if you can elaborate on that, Moses or Akhenaten being the historical Moses.
Well, his father and the one before them, the word Moses, came out of ancient Kemet. It meant one who leads his people or one who's the protector of his people. So his father before him, Moses and Tutmose, all the certain words that essentially meant protector or leader of his people, it became to know as one cup from the water in accordance with Hebrew's definition, with the word Moses. But the story unfolds in such a way that you begin to see, you know, the true history of Kemet at the time after the 13th dynasty, which was pretty much all black for that. Going into the 14th, 15th, 16th, 18th, that's after the inversion of a lot of the invaders who began to take over, and there was a lot of shifting and different types of people that were ascending the throne. One of them, of course, being Alexander's general, Ptolemy. But Akhenaten essentially wanted to drive out what he thought was the destruction of Kemet, because the priesthood had become so corrupt, and the political system was the theocratic system, and all the different temples essentially had their own little fiefdom, so to speak. And what he wanted to do was destroy all the gods, and therefore create one god, which would then make him a dictator, because his god, Aten, would then be the one that everybody has to come to, therefore come through him. So what he did was he began with his power to destroy all of the different powers of the temple, the temple of Amen, the temple of Ptah, all the different temples that were essentially theocratic connected, like the Senate, House of Representatives, different branches of this theocratic system. By destroying all these temples, he was destroying the governmental structure of Kemet. Now, it didn't sit so well with the people, because he would have the soldiers, he would order that anybody who had any kind of icon to Isis or Ab, or to Osa, or Eru, or Amen, or any of these, the priesthoods of Amen, any of these gods or deities, that they would be arrested or they would be taken out of their homes. So he ordered everybody to get rid of every other icon and to put up nothing but Aten in their rooms and in their homes. So what he did was essentially create a dictatorship. That's the way you see the president today, completely ignoring conflict and just going to war and doing what he wanted. But in this sense, Akhenaten wanted to bring other people in. So he began to befriend Syria and all the neighboring countries and began bringing them in as advisors. And he began bringing foreigners into the government of Kemet. And he wanted to create a whole new kind of theocracy, everybody kind of kumbaya, and he wanted to rewrite all of the, he thought was the polluted works based on the interpretation, priest of Aten, the priest of Ptah. He really wanted to do a sweeping change of all of Kemet. Now, what he did was try to change the minds of people who had been set to a specific way of being thousands of years. The people didn't like it. They would be revolting. He'd have to put down the vote. And most people don't know this part. Everybody loves Akhenaten because the Jews and the Christians love Akhenaten under this one God concept. This is where it came from. Well, because everything started getting crazy in Kem, most of what it is Akhenaten was supposed to be doing, because he was all into this spiritual stuff, he wasn't taking care of any of the political business. So a lot of the holdings of Kem and all of the different, sections where they controlled trade and shipping and all that began to be attacked because nobody was actually paying attention. They were too busy singing the new Aten phrases. But what happened was he said, well, I can't take it in Kemet anymore. So he went out of Kemet and built this a whole city called Amana. And he said, listen, I don't care about anything going on in Cam. He left Memphis, he left all of us, and said, Empatah, which is actually Memphis. So he left and took his whole constituency, and they went into this place, and all they did was sing and love, and it was like a hippie commune. So what happened was, since everybody was saying, well, you know, Kennedy's doing nothing, now I'm going to go ahead and take over. Everything began coming down. The economy started going bad. And of course, he had a priesthood. Priest of Malawi, who had a temple right across from the Nile. They had a whole temple. The priesthood of Malawi was a priest who was a priest of Akhenaten, the priest of Aten. When the Kemet began to go apart, it was whole in half. The general who actually took Tola Ramesses, who was a young boy at that time, a young general at that time, he said, okay, I tell you what, I'm going to have to go up north and quell all the rebellions going up there. I'm sending you down to Amana to kick some Akhenaten butt. You're going to throw him out. You're going to destroy Amana because this guy is completely undermining the geopolitical. So it was Ramesses who was actually sent down to drive out and to wipe out Akhenaten. And that's who it was that got run out into the Sinai. Akhenaten was thrown out into the Sinai. And what happened was, the priesthood of Malawi, those are the ones that end up becoming the Levites of the Bible. Or the priests of Levi. And all of the so-called Moses leading his people out of Kemet and all of that, that was everybody being thrown out at that time for what they did to undermine the geopolitical system and the commercial system of Kemet. So that's where that story came up. And the reason why Kemet was hated so much is because the priests of Malawi, who became the so-called Levites and all the tribes, it was them who wrote the Bible, or wrote up all the schematics that became the Bible and made Egypt the hated one.
Wow. Wow. Now, we're very short on time. We got 3 minutes left, right? And, you know, again, when we got disconnected, I kind of prepped my audience to let them know that, you know, they got to get their weight up before they deal with Dr. Phil. You really have to study and get a background before they deal with you to really be able to understand the information that you come with. And what you just presented for us was so powerful, because so many folks walk around with Akhenaten and Nefertiti, and we all know King Tut. So you kind of just put that into a perspective that I'm sure most of our viewership is not familiar with. But
story down. There's a lot more to the story.
I'm sure, and I'm gonna be twisting your arm to come back on so we can go back into a little more. But one of the questions that I had for you that I didn't really get a chance to get to, but here we are with it, is, you know, when we deal with Black History Month, African History Month, however you want to frame it, we usually deal with slavery and civil rights. And, you know, one of the things that we want to get across to our viewership is that it's so important for us to go well beyond slavery to get a complete understanding of our history. So I was hoping that you could just speak to that before we pay our audience a goodbye.
Well, as far as civil rights, the whole 9 yards, civil rights is really not what we're supposed to be pursuing. Civil rights is brought us back under Roman law. So we're supposed to be dealing with our own human rights, our indigenous rights. And Martin got tricked, of course. He didn't know what was going on. He was pretty much a Christian who pretty much, again, following orders. And it was Jews who actually backed and created the promotion for the civil rights movement.
That's right.
To undermine what it is that we were doing in different sectors by ourselves as a separate society. They did not want us to be a separate society. But if anybody wants to really know more about this, they should join our university. If they're really into it, we're starting at 10, like I said, our class is on the 15th.
Can you
and they want to get in deeper into it, we can talk about that.
Yeah, no, really quick for our audience, can you just please give them some contact information so they can get at you?
Sure enough, 800-847-1291. You can find my new videos that I did last year, and Brother Black Dot was there. They can call 800-847-1291. That video is available, and we are registering right now. Again, 800-847-1291.
Now, please, audience, if you're interested in anything that you heard today, please get at Dr. Philip Valentine, because the brother is very, very powerful, and it'll be well worth your dollar to spend it with him. Trust me when I say, get it directly from the source. Brother Black Dot, real quick, give you some contact information for our audience.
blackdot16 at hotmail.com.
My name is Hakeem Green. This is Say That.
Say that.
We say that.
Say that.
All right? Peace. It's an hour.
That's a wrap.
Sorry, y'all.
We're still online.
We're still on? Are we still on?
Online?
Well, you know what? There you go. We're rocking. We got to call it in. Let's see what they got to say. Peace, peace. Hello?
Yeah, this is Tariq. Yeah.
What's up, Tariq?
Are we still on the air?
Yeah, we still on the air. We extended it just for you, bruh. Say that. What you got to say?
Okay. Yeah, I was calling in. My questions either for Black Dot or Phil Valentine.
Black Dot, the Black Dot.
Black Dot's in the building? Okay. I was calling to get more clarity on the melanin history and the biochemistry of our body and what foods we should be eating and what our ancestors ate.
Well, you know what? Dr. Phil Valentine, actually, we lost him. He's off the line. And he would probably be best suited to answer that question for you.
Indeed, indeed.
But what we'll do is we're going to schedule a show specifically around nutrition.
Okay.
So we can have an in-depth conversation, and we can, so you can get the fullness of the question you just asked. We want to answer that in its fullness.
Okay.
That's cool?
Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, Ron, we say...
Do you think Black history is obsolete?
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, great. Tariq.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Do you think Black history is obsolete?
Yes, it is.
Why?
Because we focus on only briefly 200 years of history and not really our full history, dating back to Kemet or even in the Americas, how the Moorish Empire ruled over there and global.
Where are you from, brother? Where you calling from?
From Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn, but currently in Arizona.
Oh, you're currently in Arizona. That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing.
Indeed.
The reason why I asked that is because, you asked a great question. Or your answer, was a great answer. And it just, I'm curious as to how many like-minded folks there are throughout the country who are kind of on the page that we're on. So knowing that, though you're from Brooklyn, you're out there in Arizona, I'm sure dropping jewels. I think it's a good thing that we share this knowledge far and wide so we can get as many people on the same page as possible.
Exactly.
Well, listen, we're going to be doing this every week from 9 to 10 p.m. The name of the show is Say That.
Say that.
Just check, look us up for the updates. Check us out. Share the links with your folks. And just encourage people to call in or hit us on the chat so we can build this conversation and bring more people into the fold.
All right.
Peace, Tariq.
Peace, brother.
Peace.
Peace.
All right.